I'm Derek Spratt. I'm CEO of Turnium Technology Group, and in the corner over here, we've got John Arnett, the founder, and who ran the company for over a decade and knows a ton technically about the business, and Ralph Garcia, our chairman, out of Toronto, and a former tech analyst on Bay Street, and then an investment banker for many years, and he's been a key part of the go public process and raising us capital. So between the three of us, we are going to do the one-on-one meetings tomorrow and get into the details. So I won't necessarily talk to every point on the slides here today because we can do that deeper on the one-on-ones. So as a company, we've went through a period of raising capital for a public listing last year during the whole Ukraine invasion, which was interesting. So we brought a story called Software-Defined Wide Area Networking, which is a SaaS licensing play to partners who the white label play. And we brought that to the market just as everything was going sideways. And we would have liked to have raised more money than we did. We were aiming for 6, but we netted 3.5 and said, let's go forward. And we've just, we're in the middle of a funding right now, and also through a merger with one of our partners out of Australia, ActivePort. And so we've put together another $3.5 million so far. And that round is still open for us to consider further investment in as we go towards the closing of that merger, which we expect before the end of the year. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the details of what we do as a company, but suffice it to say, if you run a business, you will be touching this technology in some form or other, either soon or within the next year or two. And if you're a remote worker, this will eventually come towards you as well. What's happening is that wireless networks are creating a layer, a software-defined layer that goes between the physical connections, the physical, fiber optics and coax cables and Ethernet cables, and up to a software layer that is you can deploy it automatically. You can use AI to plan networks and to automatically stand them up and to launch cloud services on them. And this important layer called software-defined wide area networking is what the company has specialized in. And at the end of the presentation, really it's the jam and the sandwich is that we are launching version 7, a key new product with key new capabilities. And that's happening again towards the end of this year. I won't talk much about this other than the fact that there's some really good people here that have been leaders in the Canadian telecom space for decades and have been part of major wireless carriers, Rogers and TELUS in particular. And Ralph has done the Converged Technologies, go public, and then build it into a multi-billion-dollar revenue story on the TSX with inching towards $1 billion worth of financial transactions on the TSX as well. And we've got some really good people on this list. So TELUS had a really bad network outage. Or it was Rogers, wasn't it? Rogers had a really bad network outage last year. And people started to realize how dependent they are on their internet connection. And I think table stakes now for any business is to have a redundant backup so that if one leg goes down, you're still going with another. And best practice would be multiple wireline connections with a wireless overlay, so that if all of your wireline connections are down, then you're going to jump over to some wireless, and you're not going to, as a business, lose your capabilities. And as I said, with everything moving to the cloud, this is critical. Now, in the past, this software-defined networking and what we call bonding of internet circuits has been the purview of larger enterprises. But it's rapidly moving towards the Internet of Things and to remote work and to every point of sale, retail outlet. Everyone's got internet. And so it now becomes important for everybody to have that redundancy and that capability. So I don't want to harp on that too much, but every business, it doesn't matter what business you're in, you don't have to be in the tech business, but if you unplug the internet, you're going to be losing money pretty quickly. So the way we do it, there's really two boxes in the system. There is something called a CPE, customer premise equipment, which is as little as a box that's under $200 that goes into your facility. and there's an aggregator that's in the cloud. It's up in the data center, and an aggregator would support hundreds or if not thousands of individual CPEs in this architecture. But so you've got your cloud with all your cloud services, and then you've got the endpoints, and you're connecting them together. And there's a bunch of stuff. Obviously, when you deploy networking, you are also deploying security. And when you are thinking about a network, that network is always changing in its design. And so you actually have to have something called an orchestration layer, which allows you to, in software, define and change your network and how your network functions and what gets priority, what traffic is considered to be the most important, and so on. And so this is kind of how we do it. And as I said, the average business has about 40 cloud apps that they rely on. So this matters. Now, what differentiates us in a world where the Ciscos and the Fortinets of the world are dominating the enterprise, and they've claimed big chunks of the market segment? We are down market. We are connecting the stuff that they can't touch. This is the low end of the market. So when you've got 10,000 retail outlets and you need to have $100 cost on your endpoint, you'd go to Turnium, and you don't go to Turnium, you go to one of our partners. So we're a white label licensing solution. We tell you want to use this capability in your product that you sell to your customers, then you come to us. It's really easy. We can turn you on very quickly. We have the software APIs and the development tools and the experience and just the architecture that makes it really easy to say yes to Turnium and to get moving forward. And the stickiness of these relationships, to look at our past and realize that our churn rate is in a couple of percentage points. People don't leave when we get them as customers; they stay with us, and I think that's testament to the quality of the product that John and his team have built over the years. And so scaling up and creating a larger solution once you've embedded our solution, we've got pretty good scalability. And version 7, which again I'll talk about in a few minutes, really helps us on that scalability front. Now the market, if you pull Gartner and IDC or any analyst firm and you say what's going on with software-defined networking, and they'll point to the large enterprise or the mid-end enterprise markets, and it's well defined and it's a huge market. But the penetration rates for the SMEs and SMBs and the small home office stuff is really almost zero right now, and this is the greenfield that we're chasing. So a company in the U.S., a classic example, Evolve IP. These people will have a series of customers, thousands of customers throughout geographic regions in the U.S. They will offer them security services. They will offer them a whole bunch of different layers of value on top of what we provide. But our product is absolutely key to everything that sits on top of us. So even though we're silent, our name is not on the box, our partners really do rely on us. And when things don't go well for their competitors, then they sell even more equipment because our system gives that reliability. And we make it easy for people to say yes and get going with us. Often when we run into somebody that's interested, it's an OEM, they have a product, they want to add SD-WAN, it's kind of like a basic table stakes thing now. We can get them to say yes with a very minimal commit, which provides basically the bonding, which is what John originally built back in the day, was just taking disparate circuits and making them look as like one clean, simple pipe. And when one circuit drops, the data keeps going. And a famous quote that John has used for years is that, other people may switch over in seconds. We switch over in milliseconds. And so you don't notice that the network has switched over. And that's one of our common demonstrations with a customer, is just going in and unplugging things and saying, did you notice your network just failed? And you had no idea that it failed. And we can move people from the left-hand side of this page to the right-hand side of the page, where you have more and more capability that we provide. And again, some of that comes from some of the advanced capabilities of the next version of the product. So why would IBM and Red Hat hang out with us? We did this conference at Mobile World Congress, the big telecom space, and we're in IBM's booth. And they're talking about standing up, using Watson, their AI, standing up networks and automatically deploying networks around the world using our engine and demonstrating live to all our customers at the world's largest telecom event, how they're doing it with us, with our little yellow logo in the booth. And that matters. And why do large companies do that? Because they're chasing, these tiny retail, like massive retail chains with tiny endpoints, and they can't bring big iron solutions into those. They've got to have a small, more agile, more efficient code to base on. And we are smart enough to use Kubernetes and to go after their standards while bringing that down to a very low price point. So really interesting product offering. We're actually in Amazon's warehouses through some partners in different parts of the world. So we've got some really interesting partners here. And people constantly say amazing things about us. So I won't read the quotes. This is available for you guys to download and do one-on-ones, but lots of good things are being said about us. Fusion, one of our early customers in Australia, this fellow Jason, the CEO of Fusion, is a really classic entrepreneur, and he's really hustled to build a business with the SMB market there. And we are like super important to his business. And anyway, it's about $40,000 to $50,000 worth of monthly recurring revenue we get out of him. And we've actually started doing some bidding on some major telco agreements, like with Axiata in Indonesia and some other places where Fusion is local. Anyway, once again, they really love us. We just finished our best quarter, and a little bit of speaking about sort of negative stuff here, because every story, there's a dark side to it. So for us, we went public and didn't raise the capital that we wanted to because of Putin effectively invading Ukraine. And we decided to, get out there, but we didn't get the money that we needed to pay back our lender Firepower. And we had $2 million that we had told them we would pay them back as part of the go public process. Couldn't do it. They put us in a headlock. And so we went and did a restructuring to get the costing, because we were kind of building a growth story going public. And then we ended up having to, dramatically shift gears and go into kind of, let's get this thing break even or as close to it as possible. And let's pay our lenders back and get out of debt jail. So that's what the last 12 months looked like. That's where a lot of stress came from in our lives. But we did it. And thanks really to Ralph and to a degree John as well. They did $3.5 million that just came in, allowed us to pay back our lenders and get debt free for the first time in many years, and to reinvest and build. And while we've had that sort of difficult year, we did get version 7 complete, and it's now entering a release in the next number of weeks. So it's not a bad story, and it's nice. I do some mentoring of Vinger CEOs, and it is always nice to be able to have your independence and not be desperate to get the financing done. And so we're finally out of that mode. So we're still a little head on cash, but we've got some money to invest now, and we are doing that. And the big story for us is obviously the merger that we are working on with our partner ActivePort, and I'll talk about ActivePort in a second. So valuation-wise, we have enterprise value to sales revenue ratio of 1.7, and the large players in the space, even though the markets, all tech markets have taken a beating in the last 18 months, we're 1.7 versus 5.7, and these are the major guys. And I'll just flip through 2 slides here and talk about the Canadian sector. And that Canadian sector, again, it's sitting with some comparables much higher than our 1.7 number, almost 5. So you could argue that the reason why that happened is because we stubbed our toes and we didn't grow where we should have last year, and we had the threat of getting the loan called over our heads. But that's all behind us, and so it's all happiness now. So some of this stuff is a bit stale, but there was a flurry of activity on the M&A side when the industry got going, when this whole software-defined networking was a big enterprise play. And it's coming back now, and there's quite a bit of inbounds. We've taken some as recently as last week. So there is activity coming back. It's like really interesting being at the Planet MicroCap event today, because you couldn't have done this a sort of year ago. Everyone's in such a bad mood, really, in terms of like having any momentum and any happiness. And now people start to realize that maybe that IPO market's coming back on NASDAQ in the next 6 months. Things are coming back to life, and everyone's repositioning, which is awesome. So version 7, again, a lot of words on these 2 slides here, but let me just chunk it down to the fact that it is a very efficient code base. It's a clean sheet of paper, so we're tossing out a lot of the legacy headaches that come from, supporting customers for years and years and years on a code base. And we've now got a new code base. It's clean. It's about 10 times the efficiency on a CPU. So given amount of memory, given amount of, cycles on a CPU and threads and cores, we can crank a lot more data through. And table stakes nowadays is a gigabit per second throughput on a box. And we can take the lowest cost embedded processor that you can find, and we can run a gigabit through it. And we can also add capabilities and manage traffic at those levels. So it's a massive lift. We can probably do 2.5 gigabits in certain environments on a very low end CPU. And then there's a bunch of capability that we're putting into the product that is, again, where the industry is going. So 5G networking, you hear a lot about that today. 6G, what's happening is these networks are becoming virtualized. The traffic management and the steering of the traffic and the applications is all becoming embedded in the protocols. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but the big thing, and this is where it comes into why we're partnering up with ActivePort, is that ActivePort did orchestration, and orchestration is what IBM was demonstrating with the Watson at Mobile World Congress with us. It's where you decide what you want to do, you push a button, and all of your network provider contracts are automatically configured and executed, and then all of your data center web servers and cloud servers, everything, all those applications, Amazon, everything automatically gets registered and connected, and all the physical transports are all glued in together. So ActivePort, as a small company, has done an amazing job of building this capability. They've, again, standardized on our SD-WAN, so there's no technical risk of merging these 2 businesses together. They have been running and selling and delivering solutions globally for a couple of years now. So it's just an issue of corporate culture and time zones that we have to manage our way through, and we've been doing that quite well up to now, and I don't think that's a major risk item. They're about, like, we're a $6 million a year business. They're a $20 million a year business. We together are expecting significant synergies. We're throwing version 7 code into that. That's going to be another big synergy that's going to really lift both of our boats up. There's this whole thing about GPUs and cloud and AI. There's a side of ActivePort that involves hosting, capabilities like farming, like farms of GPUs. And again, it involves orchestration, and it involves a lot of the same code. But just think of this play as the networking layer with the deployment special sauce on top of it. And together, we're building what we expect to be a $100 million a year business within the next 2 to 3 years. And it's super exciting for us. And it's an amazing thing to have gone through a year where you had to, and I was in a mentoring session with the CEO yesterday, and he'd done exactly the same thing with his business, where he took the last year and he had to cut costs out of it, had to survive, he had to get through some difficult times. And both of us were sitting there going, wow, what a difference 6 months makes, right? Like just the feel of how each of us feel about our respective businesses and the potential. So, that's really, really it. Now, and the capitalization side of it, we are going to determine at the final exchange ratio with the ActivePort. It's going to be a share exchange. It's going to be a TSX listed company. Think, 70-30 for ActivePort Turnium in terms of the split, but it is the resulting cap table, I think, is going to be quite advantageous for our shareholders. We're going to do well in this transaction. And again, we can talk about this during breakout meetings tomorrow, or if you guys don't have meetings booked with us, we can talk about it offline. But we got a really good group of shareholders, and we are able to point to where all the shares are. And we've, as I said, got the check writers writing checks in the last couple of weeks and believing in the story and moving us forward. Now, I can open it up. I think we're a few minutes, but just perfect time here to take a few questions if anybody's got any right now. Salim has to ask one. So where TSX listed, they're ASX listed. The method, the plan of arrangement involves their getting shareholder approval, but we, just the way it's been designed and the Fasken lawyers have worked through the magic, we do not go through an EGM to approve it. It'll just go through. Now, Ralph, you can probably speak to that more succinctly than I can. We do have plans for other acquisitions. Like a lot of companies that go public, one of the reasons to put up with the brain damage is that you would then have the mechanism for picking up other companies. And when Ralph took Converge public as a small company, who would have thought that 3 or 4 years later you would have done almost 40 acquisitions and $700 million worth of financings. So this is why Ralph got involved, and this is why Canaccord's got involved with our company. Is Canaccord's going to do the transaction with ActivePort here? There are our advisors on the deal, and the idea is that we're creating some critical mass with this combination, and then we're going to move ahead. And this small market, this SME market, there's a whole bunch of opportunities to do some strategics and to do just some revenue and geographic roll-ups. So that's the plan. That's the evil plan. So it's possible for any of our partners to sub out our special sauce with somebody else's solution, but it's not that easy, and they wouldn't necessarily end up with a better product. We actually, one of their M&A inbounds last week, it's a classic deal that this company came and tire kicked us back in January, and then they thought that they could do it themselves or they could buy it from somebody else. They were sort of playing us a little bit, and then they came back hat in hand last week and said, oh, it's a lot harder than we thought. Oh, it's going to cost a lot more, or the competitive solution isn't as good as I thought it was. So I think at ActivePort, they've had to have run the math and done the competitive make versus buy alternatives, and they've stuck with us. So, and then we announced this in May. We've had lots of time to, walk from this deal, and they are literally within hours of marching to the ASX and getting things filed on their side. So, it is what it is. Okay, so we have one-on-ones booked for tomorrow. I got a full slate for tomorrow, but we are available, to talk to you guys whenever about this. There's lots of details, lots of nuances behind it, but it's a great story, and I've had a long career in telecom, and I really believe in the team. I really believe in the market, and the product is great. The product works really, really well. We got a lot of people around the world using it and relying on it. Thank you.